Hey guys, welcome to another edition of this show that we do right after the last ball drops. Today it was on Chatrier indeed, as the initial plan was going to be, and Zverev and TFO was of course the last match. Vansh, you are a repeat customer, well, repeat offender on the show. So yeah, hello. How did you enjoy today's action?
Yeah, it was definitely interesting for sure, to say the least. Yeah, I mean now we're entering the second week officially, starting tomorrow, and I guess there's quite a bit to digest, look ahead to. So yeah, happy to go into it.
Yeah, maybe let's start from the match that actually didn't happen because like 30 minutes before the start of play today, I guess you were probably still asleep, but for us it was like 30 minutes before the start of play, I think, at least on center court, because I believe that the other two matches were already going on, and
Yeah.
suddenly it was announced that Elena Rybakina will not be showing up, which definitely took everyone by surprise. Then in like 20 minutes, more details came along after she had a presser. So yeah, what does that mean for the event?
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame. I think she was obviously one of the contenders here. Looking forward to seeing that potential semifinal play out against Swiatek, but also just many matches before that. I mean, Sorriba Stormo was going to be a fun one, I think, to see. She was in good form and everything. But yeah, I mean, these things just happen sometimes. Having been in Paris last year, I can tell you that pollen is pretty rampant, like in during the month of June, and the levels are pretty insane actually, and you can get sick. And so, yeah, I can't imagine like honestly playing elite tennis if you have a fever and a headache and stuff like that. So yeah, I think now we're just gonna see her back on the grass, and she should do pretty well there.
I don't think the implication is COVID, Ghosty. Like she also mentioned allergies. Apparently, like many people have been struggling with that in Paris this year. So players are not excluded. They are not robots. They are human. They also struggle with allergies, and apparently it was also related to that. Also, when it comes to my dissertation, I actually heard that I have 2 more weeks to finish it. So still like a month. But yeah, thank you, I guess, for trying to help me build my fan base. And well, I think I think it was like both, right? I think the doctor told her that this was also related to the allergies. Anyway, yeah, definitely was quite a shock. If someone was withdrawing from that match, I was probably expecting Soriba Stormo, right? Because she's like just barely come back from injury. Rybakina, one of the main contenders for the title, and then this info hits us, which isn't great maybe for the event, but of course there are still a few other players that we thought were going to have some of the highest chances to win the event. I saw that Iga Świątek fans were like on Twitter today. They were even angry at someone for saying that she is one of the main beneficiaries of this piece of news. I'm like in the middle with this. As I probably said on these shows a few times, I still wasn't really putting, Rybakina in the semis, Sabalenka in the final. I think there's enough variance in the best of three format, especially that like I still wasn't thinking that far ahead. But of course, given the fact that Świątek has not beaten her this year in 3 attempts, well, 2.5 attempts, let's say, then certainly it also is pretty meaningful towards her run. In general, a lot of things like over the past few days it really feels like the stars are aligning for Świątek this Roland Garros, and of course it's not like she really needs them to, right? So definitely this is also one of these things that make it even more possible that she is going to be at least in the final or something like that. But yeah, I guess from this we can talk about matches that actually happened. I just mentioned Świątek, so maybe let's talk about her. I mean, bakery again, double bagel, and definitely much cleaner than the first 2 rounds, right? But it also wasn't really a challenge for her.
Yeah, I didn't really learn too much from this. You know, like double bagel, like you said, and It was very straightforward, more or less. I think she only lost 17 total points. Um, and yeah, like pretty good stats overall. I mean, I actually didn't watch any of it because I was still asleep, and she finished it up really quickly in about 50 minutes or so. But yeah, I did see this quote that she didn't really want to get into her six love results just to be respectful to the other players. But I think we'll. I was hoping that we were going to see her play Andrescu, and that obviously didn't pan out. So, and I think she has a very good record against Sorenko as well. They've played each other twice, and she's lost 4 games in total. And one was, I think they even played here last year. I want to say in the first round, and it was like
Yes. And then,
2-0,
of
and then
course, Rome. Yeah.
yeah, and then Rome. So, I mean, Sorenko's playing a lot better. Obviously, she's picked up 2 good wins this week, but I don't really see this as much of a challenge. I don't really see her challenging Iga, honestly, in the next round. So yeah, we're like you said, the stars are really kind of aligning. Not that she needs them to, but
Yeah, Andrescu felt like one of these opponents who, like, on a good day can certainly trouble her. Tsurenko, just stylistically, not so much. So, yeah, I don't know if I expect a 6-6 love, but certainly it seems like Tsurenko doesn't really have that much to hurt her with. I remember someone saying on one of these shows that like Świątek usually has a deep in her fourth round. I'm not sure if it's something that we really can be looking at. Like most of the time, it's probably just coincidence. Her struggling with Qin Wen Zheng last year. I don't think it was really based on the round. I think it was just based on the fact that she would struggle against Qin Wen back then, at least in that event, whatever round it was, probably. Well,
yeah,
maybe not in the final or something. At the U.S. Open, she also ran into Niemeyer, who clearly is a very tough matchup for her. So I don't know if it's really something I'm looking at, but yeah, Tsurenko does seem easier for her, even if she, well, on the day, at least today, she was so much stronger than Andrescu. She definitely seems a bit easier for Świątek, and I also don't think we really learned much from the match against Xinyu Wang. Oh, it was Nick. Okay, I thought it was someone in the comments actually, but maybe okay, maybe it was you. And I also wanted to say that it's still kind of like so weird to me that she runs into all these players who, in another matches, they can look amazing. And then they enter the court against her, and it's like watching, I don't know, Iga Świątek play a 10-year-old kid, except it's not a 10-year-old kid on the other side of the net. There's a very good pro there who is coming off a couple of decent wins, and yeah, it never really stops being amazing, I guess. And yeah, so far she has been really just even if she had these little little weaker moments at the beginning of the first two matches, it never really felt like there's any point watching, even, to be honest with you, like other than for enjoyment. But you kind of know what the scoreline will, what the not what the scoreline, but what the result will be, and it takes a bit of enjoyment from me, actually, I think. And yeah, certainly today was one of these matches where at some point you just kind of wanted to turn it off, and it didn't feel like anything could really happen. Is it going to be the same later on against Surenko? Kind of expect so.
yeah,
And yes, maybe speaking of that, Tsurenko Andrescu 6-1 6-1, not the result we were expecting, right? And I think everyone already had their minds and their eyes on, they set their sights on Świątek Andrescu in the forefront. And well, at first we expected Świątek Krejcikova in the forefront when the draw came out. Then Świątek Andrescu. That was again supposed to be like the problem round maybe for Iga. And yeah, now it's Świątek Tsurenko. What happened today to Bianca Andrescu?
yeah. I mean, she didn't have a good serving day. That's for sure. I think like her first serve just wasn't really there for her. It wasn't setting up the big ground strokes like it normally does. Sorenko was taking the ball a lot earlier, hitting it very cleanly, hit many winners, and Bianca was just on the back foot quite a lot, and just really struggled. A lot of routine, unforced errors like mid rallies. Just wasn't a good day at all for her, and she never really found it. I think she started to pick things up sort of like at the last 2-3 games of the match, but it was very late by then. Like I think she hit like 6 winners and 22 unforced errors, something crazy like that. So it was just not. It was just one of those really off days. Um, yeah, a bit of a shame though, because that's two majors in a row. We were expecting Iga versus Bianca, and then in the Australian Open it was Christina Buksha, and she had a match point in that one. She was very close, and then this one was not close at all. But I did kind of expect her to struggle against Serenko. I knew it wasn't going to be a straightforward match. I was thinking it might go 3 sets. I was thinking Serenko might even win, but the scoreline was very surprising. So I wonder what she says in her press conference actually, because it was, yeah, one of the
um,
worst matches I've seen her play.
Fair enough. And yeah, maybe let's talk about like the elephant in the room and the huge match that we had today. Mira Andreeva, Coco Gauff. I don't know if you can really say that any result there would be an upset or something. But well, certainly a match that we actually have like a lot of talking points after.
Yeah, for sure. Like the first set was very interesting, very competitive. The tiebreak was interesting for sure. And then really kind of after that, I felt like you know and Andreeva actually lost her focus a little bit. Her composure was getting a lot more frustrated. Goff was defending extremely well. She was finding ways to get her backhand more into play, which she absolutely needs to do because otherwise that forehand wing, we've spoken about it many times, it certainly lets her down in many situations. So she was running around a lot of forehands, hitting that inside out backhand return that she loves, and then just looping the ball in play. I thought she was doing well to sort of catch the ball. She does really well with on clay with like that pattern changing forehand down the line loopy shot, and then she can sort of lean into her backhand and then just crush it, which she's very good at. But Andreeva's forehand also I felt like left some little bit to be desired. Like I don't have a huge issue with it. Like I think she hits pretty cleanly off of both wings, and I like her strokes in general. I think when she goes to the slice, it can just sit up quite a bit, and then that's when Coco was really able to attack and take advantage. And I did think Andreeva's level dropped quite a bit in the last 2 sets, and that certainly wasn't what we were used to seeing, like in the last, particularly Madrid and here. So yeah, I think Goff like really kind of needed this result because otherwise she would have dropped a lot in the rankings, and then you know I think, but it's looking good for her. I think to get to the quarters most likely. So yeah, she came back from a set down, I think, in her first round as well. So it's a good win for her.
Yeah, I just find it kind of funny that we're used to seeing from Andreeva because even the diehards, even we have watched her like 5 6 times probably.
Yeah,
So
I was gonna say
um,
like in a really small sample size that from what we've seen.
yeah, definitely. But yeah, the first set I just thought that Andreeva wasn't really that clean compared to what we again usually see from her.
Yeah,
But she was getting a lot of short balls when she was playing through the Goff forehand. Like I don't think the issue with Goff's forehand in that match was the fact that it was spraying errors or something. It was just the fact that Andreeva had a lot of short balls to attack, and even if she missed a lot of them, because that was that was the case, the quality was spotty from both in the first set. She still had enough of them to eventually take it. And yeah, then she just collapsed. It was the first time she showed us that she is feeling the pressure. Definitely, it was the first time also that I saw her, this, I don't know, mentally, physically tired. Who knows? I mean, perhaps a combination of both. As you said, I mean, she lost her composure a lot. Like, there were the code violations,
yeah,
the fact that she hit the ball into the stands. At some point, like, one more action like this, and maybe she would have been defaulted or something. So, it was getting quite heated for sure. And then it seemed like she just had nothing left. Goff was firing all these insane second serve returns. Basically, did not give her any room to breathe. If you're tired, I thought that maybe Andreeva, was just gonna sort of throw away the second set at some point, and maybe just try to gather everything for the third. But credit to Goff because she never really allowed her that opportunity. There was no moment when Andreeva could have really overcome that little physical crisis, or maybe not so little, in fact. But there was really nothing she could really find that would allow her to get back into that match. Did it look like Coco is getting stronger on the forehand? No. I mean, there were moments when she like played it maybe with a little more height, a little spin. It was also keeping Andreeva, a bit further back behind the baseline, or like at least on the baseline, and not really forward inside the court. So on clay, she can do it, right? On clay, there's definitely an option for Goff to experiment a little bit. Also, in the height element, not only depth, but yeah, I think when Andreeva was actually playing at her, at least decent level in the opening set, the forehand was still giving her a lot of short balls. So I'm not sure if it was an amazing match from Goff, but certainly the way she was defending, as you said, the way she was attacking the second serve return. Well, it was a pretty amazing match from her, but it wasn't a match that tells you if she plays Swiatek again, she's suddenly gonna overcome all these matchup differences. That wasn't that performance, but certainly it was still quite great from her. And yeah, she has kind of proven a lot of people wrong with this run already. Then again, the job like isn't done yet. Of course, she needs to get to the quarters, but playing Schmidlova in the fourth round, she will be the big favorite there.
Yeah.
And I can't.
Yeah, Jake
Yeah, I
is
want.
making a good point
Mhm.
here about the Coco's forehand and how we've seen matches in the past where it's relatively under control and she's managing it well and protecting the weakness. But then there's other times where it's just scrutinized. I guess it usually happens against the bigger hitters, but sometimes not even majorly big. Sometimes it just like we saw what happened when she played Badosa, for example, in Madrid, or at
No,
times when
Badosa is a big hitter, bro.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, like as long as you just direct all the traffic there and
Yeah.
just make her generate with it as well, like from the middle of the court, it can sometimes, it just it either gets rushed when she's defending, or she can just spray a lot of shots and doesn't really have that good control. So we'll see against Iga. I think is going to be a really big test. Maybe even in the next round against Schmidlova.
Yeah, and Badosa, I think in that match actually, this was one of these where the Goff forehand was like spraying a lot, and even
Yeah,
when just the traffic was there, but she
because I
wasn't
didn't necessarily
actually
think Badosa
pushed.
was rushing her on that
Yeah,
wing. It was more just heavy spin, good depth.
exactly. Like it wasn't actually rushing, but she was just giving her, just playing through that wing a lot, and it was giving her benefits. Today, actually, Andreeva, had to put pace on it, had to attack to that wing, I think, to make anything happen for her, and that was also why it was so tough. Maybe if Andreeva wins the opening set 6-3, maybe she actually takes the whole match. Who knows? I also wanted to say that I'm not sure how it, maybe it's also language barrier or something. But to what Ghosty said about Świątek in last year when I was at that Warsaw 250. And honestly, the pressers with Świątek were excellent. Like she was giving really like thoughtful, very honest answers. You could ask her anything, and she wouldn't be like, I don't want to maybe give away too much or something like that. I think they were absolutely excellent. But of course, maybe it's just a language barrier. Maybe she's not also able to give that sort of honesty, that sort of truthfulness to the journalist in English. I'm not sure about that. Um, oh, and actually, someone in the chat just just did that. And well, I guess it kind of is to my point. Someone just said something very similar actually, but yeah, as I said, I'm not really sure. I usually like when I read some of her quotes on Twitter or something, it's just transcripts, right? I haven't been to an English press conference with Świątek, so can't really compare, I would say. Anyway, you mentioned Anna Karolina Szmidlova. Can she be of any danger to Gogogov?
Hmm, not maybe, but I would still probably favor Coco, especially after a match like this. And I just think it's going to give her a lot more confidence. And I don't really see Schmidlova as the type of player that could really force Goff into those errors like we were talking about. So I think Coco should actually do pretty fine in that match.
Yeah, it's like a very physical matchup, I suppose, but that's going to be fine for Goff. The way she played today, it also kind of gives me a lot of confidence that she should be progressing. And Schmiedlova's run has been fairly impressive, but that was also one of the easier sections, especially after she beat, of course, Kudermetova. So you can argue for sure that she made this section easy, but I mean, after that, she kind of had a pretty soft, she had an opening there for sure.
Yeah,
And as much as I do think that Goff is probably gonna beat her again, she hasn't really shown us that she could potentially just change something in the Świątek matchup. But let's see how it looks once they get there, or if they get there even. A
yeah,
few of the other players, well, I guess we only haven't really talked about three of them who have made it through on the women's side today. One of them, and this was actually one of the best matches of the event, maybe, was Onjaber
yeah,
prevailing over Olga Danilovic, who of course was on that insane hot streak of winning. How many was it already?
yeah. I
Eight,
think
nine,
10 matches in a row
ten
and
matches, 10 matches in a row
20
without
sets in a
losing a
row.
set.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
20
only once she got to 7-5 against Paolini, and the all the other sets she won 6-4 or less, or like or easier. So yeah, did you think of that one? And was it really one of the best matches of the event, as many people on Twitter I think have said?
yeah, I think so. I would put it in the top three. Like, I don't know if it's the best, just because the level did sort of drop off from uh, Olga as well. She did play in the first two sets. In the third, Jabeur was really kind of able to run with it. But I think the quality from what I watched was pretty good. Like, some amazing defense from both. I thought, the leftiness of Olga and just the ball striking and the way she was able to really kind of attack the corners against Jabeur and just maneuver her around. It was tough for Jabeur to like have a ton of success with her variety, because Danilovic was doing a really good job from creating off of those low slices, and she was really like, you could tell, just very strong, very confident, and so it made it very tough for Jabeur. Even when she kept getting breaks in the second set, Olga always found a way to just scrap her way back. But then amazing game for Jabeur to break and win the second set, and then I felt like the momentum was really on her side. It reminded me actually a lot of the match that Jabeur played against Shelby Rogers at the U.S. Open. I think that was the third round, and it was something very similar. Like she lost the first set 6-4, and then you know Shelby looked like she was hanging with Jabeur for most of the second set, and then once Jabeur stole the second, and then all the momentum was kind of on her side. You felt like she was going to get the job done. So I think this is like really good signs for Jabeur, because I'm surprised she's actually hit this level fairly quickly, because that injury to her calf in Stuttgart, that didn't look very good, and she had to miss Madrid, and then had a really tough draw in Rome, drawing Badosa in the first round, and then um, yeah, she's looked pretty good here the last three rounds. Like if you look at it overall, she's looked very good. So yeah, I mean, hopefully we get that Swiatek Jabeur semifinal now.
Yeah, I was talking about it with Nick yesterday, that in his WTA power rankings, he put her at four, which, well, fourth, which I never would have had it there, like maybe even in the top 10, frankly. That's how I felt about Jabber ahead of the slam, and clearly he was a lot more right than I would have been. Well, maybe
Yeah,
top 10. I mean, I haven't really thought this
I
through.
probably would have
Top
gone
10,
somewhere
top
in the
10 I
middle, like
probably would have had her, but
like 7 or 8 or something. But
like four seemed just
yeah,
very weird to me, and I actually told him that yesterday. That so far it's definitely looking like you were the guy who was correct here, and yeah, it's been a great showing. As you said, it wasn't really as easy as you would maybe think. That in order to throw Danilovic off her game, she just needs to use her magic. It
yeah,
definitely wasn't like that. It just doesn't work this way. But I did think that she so far has been looking excellent for sure, and of course this early after that Stuttgart injury, it's also quite good to see. There was a question, a very tough
yeah,
question from Jake. I actually have to say about Surenko, because I'm assuming that like the reason why this conversation was happening for him in Rotterdam was that, yeah, the question is just kind of tough. What impresses you most about Surenko's game? And it's tough to pinpoint something. I mean, but what would you have to say? Like precision, consistent depth. Um,
yeah. It's funny. Like when I watched her a few years ago, I watched her play Bouchard once at Indian Wells, and
mhm.
those were not the words I was associating with her, because she was actually very erratic, like sort of earlier on in her career.
Yeah, it happens. It
She
happens.
was
Yeah.
she was spraying like quite a bit, and just I felt like she was overhitting a lot of shots. Now I feel like she has a lot more margin, and she's actually like her rally tolerance is a lot better, and I feel like she's just more like comfortable in her own skin because I felt like she was a player who was kind of underperforming for a few years, but now she's more or less kind of where she should be. So so yeah, I don't really know if there's like one thing in particular. Maybe it's just better consistency overall, just more yeah, just greater margin, fewer mistakes. Yeah, just more solid, I would say.
Yeah, there's definitely players like this on the men's side and on the women's side that it's just so hard to like just look at them for 2 minutes and just realize what exactly is good about their games. And for sure, Tsurenko is one of them. I think Sabalenka Stevens will probably going to talk about at the end of the show, and we're like previewing what's going to happen tomorrow. But John is having fun again in the chat. Anyway, we have not talked about Haddad Maya or Bernarda Pera. Anything about their victories today?
Bernardo Pera, that was a good win for her. I thought that was kind of a 50-50 going in against Cochorito.
Okay.
I think she's kind of more or less where like I figured she should be getting to fourth round. She has that kind of potential, particularly on clay, especially with how heavy her forehand is, and just she's pretty good at like kind of moving the ball around, changing directions. Pretty good returner. So yeah, I mean, I didn't see too much of this match, so I don't really have a great analysis on it. But yeah, Pera is definitely one of those players who should be doing pretty well on clay in general.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much of this either, but I certainly agree. I mean, I am super high on Pera on clay. Of course, last year she won back-to-back WTA Tour titles.
Yeah,
But yeah, as you said, I mean that lefty forehand is just built for this. So I was actually really expecting her to push Swiatek when they played in Madrid. Of course, it didn't really happen, and it was another one of these instances when a player looks amazing before she plays Swiatek, and then comes out and just looks like 10% of their abilities, which we've said it many times, but probably a lot of that is on like the unique, at least in the women's game, mix of speed and power that Swiatek brings to the court. But certainly, I am also of this opinion that Pera should be doing runs like this on a regular basis. I mean, most of her matches so far, I guess all of her matches so far in Paris have been like 50-50 ish.
yeah,
Um, and this one probably less so for me. Like I actually thought that she was going to beat Cocheretto, but again, I'm just super high on Pera on clay compared to most people, I think. And yeah, glad to see that she has this run. And of course, Haddad Maya, we've also talked about her breaking that third round finally, breaking that second round barrier finally. I'm getting to the third round for the first time, and now she's also gotten much further. Of course, she has been so successful at every other level of competition, basically, that she also deserves to be there. And how is it in the fourth round right now? I mean, Świątek is playing Tsurenko, Schmidlova Goff, so it seems that Soribes Tormo is playing Haddad Maya, right? So that's an
yeah,
that's an amazing chance for the Brazilian. And Pera Chaber, I would say it's very tough for the Tunisian actually. Like I'm not certain that she's gonna progress there, but that should be a very high quality match.
yeah. I still expect Jabor to come through it, but I think that lefty forehand is going to be really tough for Jabor, especially on her backhand wing. She's going to have to take it a lot more earlier on the rise. We'll see like what the conditions are like and if they play day or night. But I definitely think, especially if it's in the day and the ball is jumping up, that's going to be tricky. Um, Para has like always been a nightmare. I think for players like, for example, Contavate. Every time she plays Contavate, she always seems to have her number. And yeah, she and Jill Teichman are players that I always think should do well on clay. And I think last year Teichman had a good run to the fourth round as well, and this year Para's doing it too. But yeah, Jake saying that she double faulted on 3 break points. Yeah, um,
All right, and I guess with that we should go over to the men's side where we actually had 8 matches, not seven today, just one five-setter, which maybe isn't what we were used to after the first few days of Roland Garros, because this year we've just had so many five-setters. But yeah, what was maybe the biggest story of the day when I'm looking at it? You know, most of the favorites pushed through, I suppose. I guess the one that didn't really was Thiago Seyboth against Nishioka. Did you manage to get to see any of this? This was probably one of the first matches, right? So
Yes,
were
but
you
I
still
did
asleep?
see. I
Mhm.
do know the most important set in this was the second set
Oh yeah,
because Wield had it 6-3, 4-3, 40-15, I think, and from that point on, like things got really wild for the rest of that set. So I think
wild.
that's yeah. I mean, no pun intended. But like that's where I think we have to start. Like that second set. Like, what did you kind of make of the
Yeah.
momentum swings and the ups and downs? Because like honestly, Wield could have won this match in straight sets. Because he probably should have won the second set, and so
Yeah, and it like reminded me completely of that second set against Medvedev, right? Because that was just exactly the same. Um, he wins the first set. He is in position to win the second, blows it, like just straight up blows it, and then of course the outcome at the end is just different. Against Medvedev, it went unpunished. Here, he probably just didn't have that much left in the tank. But I mean, credit to Nishioka as well for just staying in there, fighting. He was definitely great at that today, despite the body language being so negative as it's been with Nishioka for like the past 5 months or so. And
yeah.
also for like in the fifth set, he was just pulling off some amazing defense, ridiculous gets really. And even when Seyboth was like still forcing himself to actually try to move his feet and he was trying to still do something, but whenever he actually came up with a good shot, despite the legs not being that great anymore, uh, Nishoka would just still get it back. And yeah, it was a phenomenal effort anyway in these last few sets, I think. But you're perfectly right that like when we're looking back at this match, it's mostly a missed chance from Seyboth that he basically blew because of that second set. Slightly disappointing for him because I thought that right now with the sort of draw that he had, like there would be no obstacle for him to like that would be that there wasn't anyone who would be like, okay, this guy has to beat Sablefield basically until like what, the semis, the final. I'm not saying he would have made it there, but he certainly was like one of the contenders. So quite disappointing for him. Does Nishioka sort of have that same level of strength on clay? I am not convinced. So like for the event, maybe it's not that amazing that this result happened. But of course, for Nishioka, it's just astonishing, and especially on a surface that he has never really been competent, never been confident on. Um, was there anything else here in the chat that we should probably not yet? Okay, so maybe let's talk about the wins of Ruud and Rune, who are on track to meet in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
One of them lost a set today, the one who probably had the tougher opponent, right?
Yeah, I think Runa was. We pretty much expected Runa to cruise because it was kind of more or less a free third round match. And then for Rude, yeah, he struggled in the first couple of sets against Zhang, but we kind of expected that. Like Zhang is no slouch. So, but do you think like I'm I think more interested in his match against Yari. Jari actually, I keep saying it with a Y, but it's with a J, according to
Yeah,
his ATP website.
I don't
Yeah,
understand why it works like that because if you know any
yeah.
Spanish phonetics, it should be Harry,
Should be.
but yeah, he says it Jari, so I also say it like this, but I don't really get it why it's like that. But anyway, never mind.
Yeah, but I was wondering if you saw any of their match in Geneva, because I mean
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
different type of conditions, obviously with the altitude and much faster, but still he has the kind of weapons that can really bother Road. So like
Yeah,
Road just looks so suffocated and rushed for the last two sets of that match. And I actually didn't think Root played bad at all. Like it was a pretty decent level. Jari was just unbelievable from the ground and just was rushing Casper's backhand and was serving extremely well down the stretch. But it's going to be tougher probably to maintain that in 3 out of 5. Like you would just expect that Casper would find his way into the dig his teeth into the match a little bit and just make it really really physical. Especially if it's a day match, maybe Jari can't keep up that level of consistency on his serve, and with the slower balls, like heavier conditions, maybe it'll just favor Ruud a little bit more. But I'm not that so convinced. Like it's kind of a really dangerous match still for Ruud. Like hasn't really shown me that he's at the level that he was at like last year, this during this year.
Yeah, that's why I don't think that like when people complained about Root's draw being easy, I wasn't really convinced about this because he keeps meeting power players who like
Yeah,
essentially if they just come out and they have a great day, they can definitely eliminate him, you know. And for a set and a half, yeah, Zhang was the better player. Of course, in the end, it didn't really end up turning into anything. I kind of think that the match against Jari might be fairly similar. I know he has just this much Paul and Giron and like players who really can keep the ball in play, and like, that's already more than I think I expected from him. Like at least not with this sort of ease that he has done it, because well, most of his appearances this year, other than Fast Clay, they were pretty like average, if not even very mediocre. So yeah, I was not sure that he was going to take this to Paris. In the match in Geneva, he was basically unbreakable in that one. I
yeah,
think Ruud broke him in the first set, and then eventually maybe in the third when he was actually down
yeah.
a break
He's
in
a
the
break back.
decider. But like most of the games, Jario was just untouchable, and it's not going to be quite this here, quite this situation here. So I am maybe thinking that it could be similar done against as against Zhang, where Jari comes out. There's certainly some sort of yeah, just maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours that are really close. Then maybe Root starts getting a bit of a better read. Maybe Jari can only dominate in the points that are happening on his serve, because that's essentially what happened today against Zhang, where after the first two sets, he only really controlled the points that he like produced a great advantage in with his serve. On Root's serve, there was like no play whatsoever anymore. He was just working him out easily and not allowing him, even despite all that brute power that Zhang has and Jari also certainly has, he was still not allowing him to attack. If not, if if the serve, if the point wasn't already set up by the serve. Um, to whom are we? Well, there's a question in the chat about how can you talk about the game if you don't actually watch the game. Not sure
Yeah, I'm not sure which match
which
that's.
of us or which match you're referring to, because we certainly watched.
Okay.
Well, if we didn't watch and if we didn't watch something, we were saying that. But of course, we're not talking about matches we didn't watch. And yeah, I kind of think that the conditions here still make Ruud favorite, but it's just another one of these matches, right, where he plays a power player who can certainly kick him out. But yeah, I still make him favorite. It's not a controversial opinion, I know.
Oh, Iga, yeah, yeah. I mean, I sort of straight up admitted I didn't watch that. You know,
Oh, he
I
said
guess it
it,
was
yeah,
yeah.
and he
So,
didn't like go into detail on that much. So we
yeah.
cannot watch 16 matches
Yeah.
in one day. That's basically impossible. Yeah, anything on Rune? You said that it was basically like super easy and a free win, right?
Yeah,
Nothing
pretty
to
much.
write home about. Yeah, I think that was well, that was just quite funny that today on Chatrier, of course, Rybakina withdrew. Then you had Swiatek winning in 50 minutes, Rune beating Olivieri. Of course, they added doubles at least, so that's something that definitely helped the experience, but still not a great ticket today, Philippe Chatrier. And
Yeah.
well, that's mostly because of Rybakina's withdrawal. Like if Rybakina was still there and played against Ribes Tormo, it wouldn't be nowhere near as disastrous. But yeah, Rune Olivieri certainly played its part in the fact that it never really had a chance to be competitive. Anyway, Ruud, as we already said, will play Jari, of course. There's also Rune, who's going to play France Rundo.
Yeah.
Was that some sort of a surprise for you that the Argentinian prevailed, and how do you like his chances against the Dane?
I didn't. It wasn't a surprise that he won. You just figured that on with his type of forehand and just his his confidence at the minute, and also just yeah, what a great player he is on clay. I just thought he had a decent chance of beating Fritz. So I wasn't too surprised. I thought it was a pretty good match. I did enjoy watching it quite a bit. I think he'll definitely have a chance. The only thing is that I think Runa is going to be able to counterpunch his way out of a lot of problems against Cerundolo. And Cerundolo, although he was great in this match for stretches where his forehand was, unplayable, and Fritz is not the same caliber of mover and defender as Runa. So he's going to be able to get a lot more balls back in play. He's going to be able to, with really good depth. And Runa's so versatile with his defense that I think he's going to be able to go into that wall mode at the same time, just match his power as well on his own forehand, and it's going to be really tough for Cerundolo to maintain that level. I think for 3 out of 5 sets, Bruna might have some of his own dips as well. It could go 4 or 5, but um, yeah, I don't think I'm seeing the upset there, but it could get interesting.
Yeah, Rune has certainly had a bit of a weird event so far, right? I mean, pushed by Eubanks on clay, then he gets a walkover, and then he plays Olivieri, who, I mean, just had one of the easiest draws I've seen, honestly, to a Grand Slam third round.
Yeah.
Especially given that Vavasori was just like ultra tired after the match that he had with Kecmanovic, because maybe if Vavasori was like fully healthy, fully fit, I would probably expect him to beat Olivieri
I don't
actually.
know how I feel though. I'm kind of in two minds because on the one hand, I think this could be really good for Runa because
Hmm.
I mean, if we were questioning his stamina and physical durability when you get a walkover and you have an easy third round, like that certainly helps him, right? Like conserve energy for the rest of the event. But also, like, could it be bad that like he just hasn't had any tests and like maybe he'll just go into this match undercooked, and all we
Yeah,
basically have is like that Eubanks effort where he did like pick up his level a lot in the fourth set, and he in crunch time he stepped it up in the breaker in the third, and uh, overall was the better player. But I
I
don't know.
tend to think that maybe it doesn't matter that much because he already played so many matches this clay season.
Mm,
Like maybe it would have been more impactful if he, I don't know, just had two events and did not go that deep into them. But yeah, I do get that sort of discard, that it is some sort of a debate that maybe it could actually end up hurting him. Can it end up hurting him against Cerundolo? I'm not sure. And like, yeah, I think this would be a good match to like sort of ease his way into the potential quarterfinal against Ruud. Of course, a very different forehand there. So I'm not really saying that the matchups would be similar. It's just, just would be a nice workout, nice test to get him going. And yeah, with Rune's ongoing fitness issues, it's actually quite good for him to have an easy couple of rounds, right, as well.
yeah,
I actually have a question to you about Taylor Fritz, because I
mhm,
remember us talking after Monte Carlo, where he
yeah,
made the semis, and like being really excited for the rest of his clay season, because in the year 2022, he, of course, only was able to play Roland Garros after, what was it, Monte Carlo as well?
yeah. No,
Um,
I think he
yeah,
just played
Monte
Monte Carlo.
Carlo and then Roland Garros, right?
Yeah,
And this year, of course, after Monte Carlo, he was able to play Munich, Madrid, Rome, Geneva, and the French Open. And yeah, was this like, not counting Monte Carlo? Was the rest of the clay season for Fritz? Was it a disappointment? Wasn't exactly what you expected? Did you think that he was capable of more? How do you rate that rest of the clay season, discounting Monte Carlo, and especially like taking into consideration the expectations that you had for him after Monte Carlo semi?
yeah. I think after the Monte Carlo semis, I thought he had a decent chance of like with a good draw getting to the quarters. I didn't really see him like winning the title or being like one of the main contenders. But I did say his results. I will say his results after that were slightly disappointing, just because there were a few matches in there that, he certainly had all the chances in the world to close out. And you could certainly say the opponents were peaking in those moments, like Zhizheng Zhang in Madrid, for example. That was more on Zhang than it was on Fritz. But if you're a player of his caliber, like he should be getting through those types of matches more regularly. On the flip side, like I mean, yeah, then he had a slightly disappointing loss in Rome to Hanfman. It ended up aging well because like Hanfman ended up getting to the quarters. But and then there was also the match that slipped away against Dimitrov in Geneva as well. But This one, I feel like his I like the changes that he's made, like adaptations he's made to his game on clay, but it's just not enough. Like I feel like he's done a good job of like recognizing, oh, I need to go back on the return of serve and give myself a bit more time, and put some more air underneath my ground strokes, and oh, I need to add the drop shot because my I can hit the ball pretty hard, and then when my opponent is way 10 feet back from the baseline, I can throw in the dropper and it doesn't even need to be that good. So he's done those things pretty well, but I will say also, like, as good as his forehand is, he doesn't hit great angles off of it a lot of the time. It's very like linear, straight up fire,
Mm,
and
yeah.
that seems to work really well on grass, on hard courts, and that's where I would have like much higher expectations for him. Like I certainly am expecting a good grass court season, and would expect a lot more from him at the U.S. Open, where I feel like he's underperformed the most, not been past the third round. But here I just felt like it was going to get his athleticism and movement, and some of those weaker areas were going to get exposed by Cerundolo, because Cerundolo is just so versatile on his forehand. I think, like, if you take look at the players outside the top 10, I think he might have the best forehand, particularly on clay, when it's on, because yeah, just can hit these amazing angles with it, passing shots, on the run shots. It's just really, really versatile, like defensively, offensively, maybe less so, but still pretty adept. And he has a very, very good drop shot too. And Fritz was struggling on those cat and mouse points as well. So yeah, I think on overall, I think it was definitely an improvement from previous years, but like not enough to where like you could really say like, oh, he's a contender to win big titles on clay, right?
Yeah, I think that's why probably Ghosty said that despite not liking clay, Serundolo makes him appreciate it because, well, that forehand is not really a clay weapon, right? Like it is most effective on clay.
Yeah.
He is most effective on
Like,
it.
look at the match he played against Rafa last year in Wimbledon.
Yeah, at
Just such a
Wimbledon when
weapon.
fires up for like a set and is just unplayable, and yeah, that can happen in any conditions. So I think that's why you probably love France Serundolo's forehead, because it's just not a clay weapon.
Yeah,
Basically, it's just all surface thing, and it's just so huge, and maybe isn't an even a necessarily clayish stroke in the like the most common sense of it. And yeah, I would totally second what you said on the Fritz Clay season. Like it wasn't disappointing. It was okay if you just asked me about like to compare my expectations from before the Clay season. I would say it was really quite good. But yeah, after Monte Carlo, I would say I expected a tiny bit more. But
yeah,
it's not a big edge. It's not something that really is going to be a big liability or like weakness of his season when we look at it in November or wherever. But
yeah.
it certainly was just a tiny bit disappointing.
Kind of curious
Um,
where he's at in the race, because I think he's pretty
Top 10ish, I
consistent. He
think.
should be top 10 still. I think he's
I
eighth
think
right
he
now.
is like top 10ish. Yeah. Yeah, number 8, 300 points ahead of Kachanov, who needs 2 more wins, I think,
Yeah,
to overcome him. So that kind of tells you that no damage has been done really.
yeah,
So yeah, other guys who played, for example, well, Daniel Altmaier, after that fantastic upset against Yannick Sinner, did not really deliver. But I guess that's quite normal as well, right? After five
yeah,
hours and after playing the best match of your life.
yeah. I was expecting Dimitrov to win it actually. I mean, maybe not as comfortably as he did, but I was expecting a Dimitrov win, just because of, like you said, like 5 hours 25 minutes against Sinner. Like, a letdown was just kind of inevitable. Like when you have such a career high like that, and Dimitrov is just going to make you work so hard on these slow courts, particularly at night. Just hitting through him, I imagine, would be quite a nightmare. Um, but yeah, I think like overall it was, maybe the first set was the tightest in this match, because he certainly had, he broke back and it was 4-all at one point, and you thought, okay, maybe this could go to a tiebreak. But Hoffman, I mean, so sorry, not Hoffman, Altmaier. Uh, I still think he has some work to do on his forehand. Like I love his backhand, and it's like it's such a weapon on clay. It's like maybe one of the best one-handers, maybe like him and Musetti on clay right now is like top notch on in terms of like power and spin and what they can actually do like just offensively. But sometimes like when Altmaier steps into his forehand, he just doesn't isn't potent enough with it, and just doesn't have the quite that confidence, and that hurts him on other surfaces as well. Like his forehand is kind of a liability on hard courts. So
Yeah.
once he fixes that, he's going to be like such an elite player. I think. Like I don't know if he'll be top 20, but certainly be in like that 20 through 40 range for sure, right?
Yeah, I mean, last few years he's also improved his serve a lot. Like there were some indoor matches when he was just unbreakable, basically, especially in like the challengers in the States, Mexico as well. He played very well at not these 2,000 meters altitude things, but like Puerto Vallarta or um, yeah, I think I just mostly mean Puerto Vallarta to be honest with you. But yeah, he has been developing. Just today, kind of had to be a letdown, but
Yeah,
well, that's how it is. And two other matches that we haven't mentioned were like, I mean, Echeverri over George was just so easy that it
yeah,
kind of doesn't stick with me because, yeah, it was just so clean. Of course, in the second set, he had a moment when he could have easily finished that set earlier, but in the end, it actually didn't change much. Like maybe it was that sort of match like Nishioka Seibofield, right? Where if Seibofield wins that second set after kind of choking, he probably takes it in straights. Echeverry did win that second set after kind of choking and took it in straights. And of course, the last match of the day on Philippe Chatrier was Zverev Tiafoe, which I guess was one of the highlights of today as well.
yeah. I guess so. Um, Not the greatest match to watch, just because slow nighttime conditions.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, there weren't that many amazing rallies or anything like that. But I figured like the longer the match was gonna go, I figured that Zverev was just gonna out physical Tiafo, and that's like kind of what ended up happening. And he was just stronger in the breakers. He probably Tiafo probably should have closed out the fourth set.
yeah. I think
That's
that's
the big
the
one
main
though.
that's
Like
the main takeaway.
five
Yeah.
three up, and he played a shocker of a game. He was 30 love up, and yeah, he just kind of dominated the break back, and that was because Zverev threw in a couple of gifts as well in the eighth game, and he had game points and hit a double fault, and he was getting really really tight towards the end, and Tiafo like couldn't quite take advantage, so that was disappointing if you're a Francis fan because yeah, and I think he was even up a mini break in the second set, but after that, like Zverev stepped up his game, and then Tiafo went up a break in the third as well, and then he lost 6 games in a row, and he kind of just let that set go after a while, and Zverev was just getting tougher and tougher to hit through with his defense, with these slower, heavier, slower balls, and they fluff up so much, and it becomes really, really slow, especially at night. And yeah, I mean, Francis was just trying to get to the net as much as he could, and it worked. At some points, I definitely think he had a surge in the fourth set. I wish he had capitalized on it, and then maybe we could have seen a more entertaining finish in the fifth. But uh, yeah, at the same time, maybe glad that it was over in four because otherwise, we might still be watching that match, and then this would get so delayed. This is what we're doing the show right now, right?
Yeah, we would be starting the last ball drop maybe by this moment. Maybe we actually still would have been watching a fifth set tiebreak. But yeah, I think the main takeaway was just really Tiafoe not stepping up in that fourth set in the key moments at all. There was also that one in the tiebreaker when he had I think he played a forehand drop shot and Zverev just barely caught it. It was
Oh
basically
yeah,
out of the court, and Tiafoe just dumps a volley into the net. It wasn't maybe the easiest volley I've ever seen, but still, like with your opponent out of the court and with no chance, they do get fluffier,
I think they literally
ghosty.
get
Yeah,
fluffier. Like you can see the
yeah.
fluff, like when the players are holding the ball.
It's been a topic since the beginning of the of Roland Garros that players have been complaining about this. Today, for example, in Zhang against Ruud, Ruud at the, like in the
Mm.
second set or maybe at the end of the first was talking about it with the umpire for quite a long time. I think it kind of shows that someone like Zhang wasn't really bothered with it because he just like has all the raw power to hit through fluffy balls anyway. But for Ruud, they were actually kind of hampering him. And yeah, you're very right that in these night conditions, um, I mean, it's not because of actually like clay. It doesn't happen all the time. It's something with these particular balls that
Yeah,
is actually
it's
making them fluff
Wilson
up
balls,
very.
I think. Right,
Yeah,
Wilson balls. And I actually heard Alcaraz say that somebody asked him if there's one thing you could change in tennis, what would it be? And he said we should play with the same ball every week.
and that's a very good that's a very good
And I,
answer, I
I
think.
love that answer, and he didn't even think; he just said it right away. Like it was
Yeah,
just on top of his mind.
it should be like this. The tennis ball that the tournament is playing with, it shouldn't really be a factor, I think. Then again, maybe you could argue that if some players just didn't like the balls that the whole tour played with, then they would be at a disadvantage. But I think they would probably manage to just get a grip on them after a
Yeah,
while. Um, so yeah, but it is certainly the case that the balls at Roland Garros do get fluffy very very quickly, and yeah, night conditions definitely hurt Tiafoe more than Zverev. Even on serve, like you can't really see the difference in how Zverev serves. I think at night, and
yeah,
Tiafoe, it was certainly neutralized, especially when you compare it to the Karatsev match that he played. And yeah, I guess that would be really most of the things that have happened today, right? We have covered it all, so we can probably talk about just just a short preview for tomorrow.
yeah.
We actually get a night session women's match. Any comment
Yeah,
on that, or do we just skip this topic because it's kind of
yeah.
it's
I
kind
feel
of
like it's been
overplayed, but at
been
the same
overplayed
time,
like the whole week. 0 for 6, 0 for 7. Like people have just sort of been counting it down. But I think I saw Ben Rothenberg say that either make it a men's match every single day, or start the session earlier and put two matches there. So I've seen all different types of opinions. The tennis podcast seems to be extremely angry about it, like every single day. Um, but this is if they were going to choose one, this is a good match. So I think
and
if I had
they were
betting
always
money
gonna
is
do
what,
one, right?
like I don't
Just
see
in
this
order to
one
like
being
avoid
being like a one
backlash.
hour double bagel or something. That was always going to be a risk with the women's match anyway. But
Yeah.
I think this one will be a great option. Even though I would say Alcaraz Musetti is up there too, but this is this is going to be one of the matches to watch for sure tomorrow.
Yeah, I also have very mixed feelings about this. Like clearly the night sessions are like basically pointless. They should probably scrap them altogether if they actually have
Yeah,
to have them for some reason, just to make more money. I would definitely welcome just putting two matches there every single day. And that would be the best, I think, for everyone. There would be no talk about, who gets favored or who doesn't. At the same
yeah,
time, yeah, I very much agree with, like, understand that the organizers want to put men's matches there. They are simply longer. It's not as much of a risk. But yeah, in the end, it might turn up okay with this one actually. They also started the day session on Chatrier earlier because of that. One thing I guess that well, the hot ticket, says Sean. What does that mean if something is a hot ticket? Like that it gets resold, or no,
Oh yeah, one
no,
other
that
thing is also these
that
matches
everyone
are like
wants to
kind of
buy it.
advertised. Like the night session is supposed to be like what they think is the match of the day
Yeah,
because it's
but
going to
like
be
it's actually
called
one
that.
of the worst tickets in tennis, right? Because you only
Yeah,
get one match and it is horribly overpriced. At
and
the
also
same
like if
time,
you're a
also,
player, do you really want to play at night? Like it's one of the worst conditions possible to play. Like we were just talking about slow, heavy, fluffy balls. Like I don't think the players really want to play at night. Uh, Men or
yeah,
women, right? Like it's
a lot of them
not
don't want
possible.
to. Yeah, that's how it sounded to me, that hot ticket should be a good ticket, but because of the like the phrasing of the question and how it's really not a hot ticket at all. Like it's actually one of the worst things you can buy, I think, with with your money at Roland Garros. And at the same time, a lot of tickets today, when it was announced that Sabalenka and Stevens were going to play
Oh
in the
yeah.
night session, they went to resale. That's not
Mm,
great either. And well, especially for the people who are of the opinion that they should be putting more women's matches in. If we really get like very little crowd tomorrow on Sabalenka Stevens, that's not going to be that's not going to be a great look for them. But anyway, let's stop talking about this now. And certainly Sabalenka Stevens, Jake wanted to talk about this one too. And I agree with him that the conditions do favor Stevens. And
agreed.
Nick asked me this question yesterday, and basically it was about like who from the bottom half do you think has like the best matchup against Sabalenka? Who can actually threaten her? And I think it's Stevens. I don't think Svitolina or Kasatkina have like a real shot against Sabalenka. I think they are just going to be overpowered. I kind of tend to think that maybe Muhova could have a shot, but I'm not sure I really like the matchup. I
Yeah.
think the two that have the best chance against her just stylistically are Pavlyuchenkova, who has already beaten her at the French 2 years ago, and just has a power game that would sort of allow her to match Sabalenka at least, yeah, at least in that, maybe not necessarily in the level of execution right now, and also Stevens. Stevens, she just played Putintseva, which was a very tough match for her, because it's always tough for Stevens when she's playing like another counter puncher. She just doesn't maybe know how to win points then, and basically it becomes like this huge dogfight and the slugfest. Against Sabalenka, this is something that is really natural for her.
Yes.
She is exactly like, she's going to come out onto the court with a game plan, and it's not even going to be like a huge game plan. I think she's just going to have to play whatever comes natural for her. And for that reason, I think it actually might be closer than people expect, and definitely the night conditions should help her, at least in to some extent. So yeah, I am definitely of the opinion that it is going to be quite interesting tomorrow, and Stevens playing the way she has been so far, and just against an opponent that her game really maybe matches up decently against, no matter what the level is. I'm not talking about the level. Of course, Sabalenka has been 1,000 times better than Stevens this year. But I think she could really do some damage here.
Yeah, I think you summed it up well in terms of like when you're talking about the different players in the draw that could challenge Sabalenka. Stevens for me is right up there, just because like she likes to play so much on instinct, and this is a really good match for her to kind of do that against, because she can just soak up all the pace that Sabalenka throws at her, drop back in her court position, just like use her good defense and like really good I guess counter punching skills, and just make life really difficult, and make Sabalenka hit several balls to finish off points. Whereas against Putin Seva, it's kind of like a completely different matchup, completely different. Like it's couldn't be more opposite. But these night conditions, I think, are definitely going to help her. She'll have to serve well, that's for sure, and that'll get maybe tougher. Like holding serve will be probably a challenge, but I think if she can work her way into some longer points, kind of use her variation, like use mix up the heights and spins. She does that really well, and also pretty comfortable like attacking when she's like when she builds up a good lead and she gets some momentum going. She can be pretty tough to spot, and her footwork is like very smooth and effortless. So I think this will be challenging for Sabalenka. I think this is the first time she's made the fourth round, but it felt like one of those stats that like eventually was going to happen, kind of like Felix winning a title last year.
Okay.
Um, but but yeah, this is the ultimate test, I think, for Sabalenka. If she comes through this at night against a good version of Stephens, then we can start talking about her as like oh, she could win this title.
Yeah. Or at least like, yeah, she has an overwhelming chance to get to the finals.
I
That's
think
what
the
I'm
head to
gonna
head
say
is 3
tomorrow.
0 Sabalenka, but then again, with Sabalenka and head to heads, I don't put that much stock on them, just because she is like a different player this year. Like she is much better this year than previous years. So I think like I don't know if you can read too much into it. Like, but I will say like the fact that all three went to three sets, and that they were fairly close. I don't think they've played on clay either. So yeah, like not too much to read into it, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
I feel like a lot of the time we're just saying the same things, but just kind of rephrasing them. And I actually have to say that what you just said is what I said to Nick yesterday, because he was like giving me this whole sort of statistical analysis of the fact that when a WTA player wins a Grand Slam for the first time, unless it's like her first appearance there or her second appearance there, she usually like had a couple of deep runs there in the past. So let's say a fourth round or a quarter final. And I remember like it made sense. Like he gave me
Yeah,
Sofia Kenin as an example of a player who didn't really have that. Had a couple of French Open appearances and never went deep. So he basically said that it's unlikely for Sabalenka to win this because she played the French Open a few times, didn't go deep, and that's why it's unlikely for her to win this. Like at first, I just kind of told him that like these arguments, I generally don't buy them, but also that Sabalenka's 2023, like everything is just so much different. Everything doesn't fit the pattern. So
yeah.
I
Like
don't
I'll
think
give
it
you an
really
example.
makes.
She played
Yeah.
Donna Vekic right at the Australian Open. I think their head to head was like 5-1 going into that. It didn't matter. Like in the quarterfinal, right? It was 6-3,
Mm-hmm.
6-2 for Sabalenka, and you could just see right away like it's not really something that even enters these players' minds, especially when you're like that different and you're like that much more confident in your abilities. I
Yeah.
don't think.
Unless it's like a real matchup issue, a big matchup edge. But
Yeah,
in that case, Sabalenka Vekic, I don't think there was ever really one. But this is a perfect segue to talk about Svitolina Kasatkina, because we have a 6-love head-to-head there
Yeah,
for Svitolina. And does that matter? Is there a matchup edge there? Is there something that makes Svitolina just so much better in their matches against Kasatkina, or does the fact that in the past 4 years, I think they only played once, just mean that it doesn't matter at all, and tomorrow is just a blank page for them.
I think so. Also because Svitolina wasn't on the tour for like over a year, so now you're going to start looking at matches from 2-3 years ago where, you know, like Kazakina wasn't as good in 2019 through 2021 as she was in 2018 and 2022, right? So it's kind of like they weren't playing their best at the same time, and I guess you could say like Svitolina probably has some matchup advantages. She can protect her second serve better and stuff like that, but I've been actually very impressed by the way Kazakina is playing this whole week, right? I mean, we said that when we both were of the opinion that Vondrousova was like it was going to be a close match, but Vondrousova would probably end up having the edge. And actually, it turned out Kazakina was the more proactive player. She was the one stepping in and controlling, dictating play a lot more, and you know, and she crushed Peyton Stearns, which I wasn't expecting either. I thought Stearns would put up a pretty good fight, and we'd have a really great contrast of styles, and we'd have all these amazing highlight reel points. Like Kazakina had that amazing tweener that she hit against Vondrousova, which was blowing up. But but she just seems to be just in like the pressure's totally off, even though she's defending a semifinal, which is like it made up a huge chunk of her points last year. But I think this will be a totally clean state in terms of this match, and actually, it could be very interesting. I think I'm slightly leaning towards Kazakina, but yeah. I mean, what do you think in terms of like who has an edge going in?
Yeah, I think if she plays like against Vondroushova, where she indeed was the more proactive player, she was really hitting her forehand very aggressively. I think this is something that can really turn the matchup around in her favor. Plus, also there's the added sort of aspect of Svitolina winning Strasbourg, having a lot more time on the court as well in Paris. I think Kasatkina is actually a pretty sizable favorite. And yeah, the way she's been playing this week, she might be like one of the most, at least like to the general public, I think, overlooked players so far. I mean, before the slam, she was certainly overlooked by me, but that's mostly because I just thought Vondroushova was so strong. And I mean,
Yeah,
everyone thought that Vondroushova was like a pretty massive favorite for the bookies in that much. So it wasn't really just us. But yeah, the way she played against Vondroushova, especially, I think this is a pretty well. It's not a similar matchup, but yeah, just the dynamics of play will probably be fairly similar. In that, I think in the past, probably Kasatkina struggled in this one because well, she just couldn't maybe really be on top of the rallies, control the point against Svitolina. It was also a bit of a Stevens against another counter puncher type of thing, where they kind of played a similar thing, but in the past, Svitolina used to be much better at this.
yeah,
I don't think it really holds up right now. So yeah, I would say Kasatkina can definitely do it. Um, no, I mean Ghosty definitely not an accident that Kasatkina and Jabber are doing well at Roland Garros. These sort of styles are always going to be a bit better on clay than on other surfaces, but of course, all of these, both these players are actually very versatile too. So
yeah.
but
They're
yeah,
pretty.
Ron
They're
Garros,
both
not
pretty
an
good
accident.
natural surface players. Like they can transfer over
Oh
that
yeah.
style to the grass as well, and it seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, and on the women's side, there's also a couple of other matches. Are you excited for Muchova Avanesian or Pavlyuchenkova Mertens?
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see sort of how it looks like. I haven't watched too much of Evanescent actually. I saw like the very end against Hassan, but I don't have such a great read on her as a player. Like I just don't have that the like as much knowledge. Like I didn't expect her to get to the fourth round. She lost in the third round of qualifying, and then she had that win over Bencic. So I'm kind of fascinated to see that, just so I can gather some more data about Evan Neeson. I was impressed by Mukova beating Begu very easily. Begu is a pretty decent player actually on the surface, and I thought that might be more challenging for Mukova. I still expected Mukova to win, um, but I'd be surprised if Mukova lost tomorrow. That's for sure. I think she's a pretty sizable favorite. Martins and Pavlyuchenkova is going to be very fascinating. Actually, it's that's kind of a tough one to call. Actually, like that's very 50-50, I think. I don't know who I'd give the edge to. In that one, I was impressed with Martins against Pagula. Then again, I thought that, like Pagula's lack of preparation coming into this tournament certainly had to be a factor in that result. Along with Martins, of course, like really stepping up and just playing offensive tennis. Looked like Pagula was really undecisive and on the back foot for most of that match and never really found a way in it. But I'm interested to see Martins Pavlyuchenkova because Martins is always one of those sneaky players who just always seems to get to the fourth round. She had that amazing streak I remember at one point where she made like 18 consecutive third rounds at majors, which is actually pretty hard to do. That means she's pretty upset proof. But yeah, uh, and they haven't played each other in like over 6 years, so I think that makes it even harder to call.
Yeah, I think today I was checking the head-to-heads ahead of tomorrow's Challenger finals, and Gakov and Ferreira Silva. I see that Gakov is leading 1-0, and I'm like, oh, I have to check it. Maybe it influences my judgment in any way. And then I realized it's a futures from 2013. So yeah, probably not gonna matter that much. Anyway, speaking of this, yeah, Pavlyuchenkova Mertens, I have nothing to add really. Seems as 50 as much of a 50-50 as they come. Pavlyuchenkova like with the higher upside, Mertens with the consistency. I don't really know. And yeah,
Yeah. I would not want to bet on
Avanesian.
that match for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't, definitely not, unless you just like 50 getting a 50-50 and like yeah, just unless you like roulette, then
Yeah,
you can do it. And Avanesian moonbolt Tossen to death. I just don't know if against Muchova it's really a strat that can really help her survive. Tossen still so much less experience than Muchova, so much less variety as well. Even if the easy power is definitely a lot bigger. So I think it's a style that's not gonna work out against Muchova, and she probably will have to she will be forced to look for something else, and I'm not sure she will find it. So, but of course, everyone is like considering Muchova to be a big favorite there. And yeah, on the men's side, we have 4 matches as well. I
yeah,
think at least one of them does not look exciting at all, and especially
yes,
also because of the scheduling. I actually hate it. Like I don't understand how they can put Varias second. I know it's not their fault that he well basically went to a fifth set in every single match he played, and also finished at like midnight yesterday. But still, if you can do it, like if you can give him a little more time and ensure a better quality of the match while not wrecking the schedule, I think you should do it. I can't really understand why they would put him second on.
yeah. That's strange because he finished so late in that day before yesterday against
Yeah.
Hubie, so that makes sense. And also, I thought this would be the one match that Djokovic would play on Longland. So you
Okay.
know, but yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like this match is not very interesting, honestly. Djokovic, Varias. I don't see this being challenging at all. Uh, like just the odds are so against the Peruvian, and also he's coming off of 15 sets played and two sets of comebacks and one win against UB in 5 sets as well. But yeah, that's like the least interesting match. This will be like a 2-3-3 type scoreline probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Varias had many chances, like anyway, right? Like I don't think he can realistically do it, but I think they this definitely even lowers that percentage that he had against Djokovic. Otherwise, of course, we have Kachanov, Sonego, Ofner, Tsitsipas, and Alcaraz, Musetti, which I think are all to an extent quite
Yeah,
exciting. Kachanov, Sonego, like it's not quite Pavlyuchenkova Mertens levels in terms of being close, but it's certainly the match of the day that on paper feels feels the tightest. I do have I don't think it's a sneaking suspicion. It's actually pretty clear to me that like Ofner will not go down without a fight. I think he is just stylistically so much tougher for Tsitsipas than like Schwartzman or Kerbais. He is going to at least have some free points, with his power game, with his serve, and just put pressure on Tsitsipas that Carballes, Baena, and Schwartzman were absolutely unable to do. I don't think he can really win this match. I'm not sure he has like the tactical discipline to just keep himself so steady and also target the weaknesses in Tsitsipas's game for at least 3 sets. But I do think that it will be pretty close, and Alcaraz Musetti, everyone is waiting for this.
Yeah, I could see Offner like winning a set or
Yeah,
pushing
getting
Tsitsipas to a tie
two
break.
tie breaks, one tie
Yeah.
break, yeah, getting a set, yeah.
Actually, the
So
second set is usually the one where you see maybe Tsitsipas's level drop just a little bit, and the opponent usually raises his. Um, yeah, like so many matches I've seen Tsitsipas just like wins the first set 6-3 in like standard 30-35 minutes, and then has a slight dip at the start of the second or somewhere middle of the second, and the opponent starts to get a handle on sort of how to attack the weaknesses, and then things get a little bit more complicated. But usually Steph figures it out and finds a way through. So I see this as like very similar.
yeah, and how about Alcaraz Musetti? This is the big one. This is the one that
Yeah.
everyone is waiting for. After how great Musetti has been looking the first few rounds, is it really going to be that close? Is it really going to be a match where we see what Alcaraz is made of? Because even when Alcaraz was supposed to play Shapovalov, there were a lot of people who were thinking, okay, this is the match where he gets pushed, and of course that didn't really happen.
Yeah, but Shapovalov is just not in the same class anymore, in terms of like he's not really serious. Like he was never seriously going to be a threat. I think that was more out of hope than and people wanting a close match rather than actually believing it. I mean, that's kind of what played out, right? Like, I mean, Shapovalov had that one burst at the start of the second set, and then he really like could not maintain his level and double faulted a lot of his breaks back, and then Alcaraz really just like was at a totally different class, and it felt like one serious contender and someone who has a lot of talent and potential, but you know has a lot of work to do still to get anywhere close to, let's say, even the level that he was at when he pushed Djokovic a little bit at Wimbledon. But like it's not. Whereas Musetti, I feel like is in a much different place. Like he's coming in with a good chunk of matches in form, and he's actually like he was very impressive against Nori, even though Nori, like I thought, played pretty poorly the first two sets. But even when Nori started to come back at him, Musetti showed his full array of skills, and he's been hitting his forehand really well. These conditions suit him to a T, I think, and pretty much only elite players like Djokovic and Tsitsipas in 5 sets have knocked him off so far at Roland Garros. So I like the confidence that he's coming with, and I do think he had a real strategy against uh, Alcaraz when they played in Hamburg, and he could sustain it, for 2 out of 3 sets. Now the question is, will he be able to do that in 3 out of 5? And I tend to think it's going to be harder. Like that's why I don't think he'll pull off the upset, but a set would not shock me at all, and maybe even 2 sets if Alcaraz is. Uh, starting to get a little too trigger happy. That could certainly happen. So I'm probably somewhere in between it being like a classic and a straight set demolition.
Yeah, Ghosty, it's not my tweet, so it wasn't me who put the flag next to Kachanov's name. So thankfully, I am free from Ursula von der Leyen, and she's not gonna get my ass. Anyway, Jake was also asking about like unsettling, disrupting Carlos tactically. The past few opponents he struggled with, so like Maroshan, Struff, Rusuvori, they were all just rushing him, right? And he had no idea what to do. Like he was playing their game. He wasn't actually using his assets, but actually trying to just also finish the points very early. Is that something? Maybe. I do agree that Musetti also has a chance with just how varied his play is, and I think this is also something that could still disrupt Alcaraz, probably more so than like what was often um, yeah, in 2022 he was often pushed by like good defenders. That doesn't seem to work that much anymore. But Musetti, he's got every single shot in the book basically, and he can be a good defender, but at the same time, he can throw some junk on the next point, and on the next one he can serve and volley, or just hit a violent backhand down the line. So I think that makes him pretty tough for him as well. And I am excited for it because we have, even though we've seen this match twice, Trieste 2020 and Hamburg 2022, it certainly feels like, especially with just the repertoire that they have, how wide it is for both guys. There is still so much to discover in this matchup. Even though we've seen this twice, I don't feel like I have any hang of how it's gonna go. I don't feel like I have any hang of how this matchup will look, over the years potentially. Whereas there are definitely just rivalries where you see one match and you are just certain, okay, that's how it's gonna go, and that's how it goes 10 times. And Alcaraz Musetti is far from that. I
Yeah,
definitely feel like we haven't seen everything from that rivalry. Every single match between them is actually going to be somewhat different to each other, and that's, I guess, what makes it really exciting ahead of tomorrow. And it is the match of the day for me, for sure.
yeah, and then also technically, I'm interested in like the serve and return dynamic because when they played in Hamburg, Musetti was like those really potent kick serves that Alcaraz is able to hit on the outside that usually
Hmm.
bother most righties. Musetti was actually able to get quite a lot of depth and loop on his backhand return and actually like prevent Carlos from just straight up attacking him on the +1. And so he was able to neutralize that serve like a lot better than, let's say, like for example, Tsitsipas when he has that same backhand on the return. So I think, and then that can get Musetti into a lot more
That's a
long
pretty
rallies.
extreme example, but yeah, I get
Um,
it.
but I think it definitely worked in that match in terms of like preventing Alcaraz from just straight up doing +1
Hmm.
damage on his forehand or backhand. So and if it's a really really slow clay court, and if it's this isn't going to be like the night match, so it'll be somewhat medium like day to night, right? So I think it'll be yeah. I don't know who that really gives an advantage to, but I think it's a better matchup for Musetti than it would be for a lot of other players.
I think that kind of makes the beatdown more probable. But then again, if it's just not, if it's not like just Alcaraz coming out and firing +1 forehand winners, then probably it's not gonna matter anyway. But
Yeah,
if it's like speedy to a point where he could get a lot out of his first serve and the first forehand, then that could mean trouble for Musetti. But yeah, he has a lot of ideas to try to counteract it. And I guess we're coming to an end, right? I mean, we have talked about every single winner of the day. We have talked about most of the
yeah.
matches that are going to be happening tomorrow. Any finishing thoughts? Any last words?
Nope. I think we hit it. We hit it all.
Yeah, I think this has been. I actually went back on the Talking Tennis channel to check out like the average length of these shows, and they mostly ranged between 1 hour 20 and 1 hour 50.
Yeah.
Besides one, there was one that was 45 minutes long, and you know what made the difference?
Really? Was that this tournament?
Yes, there was one that was just 45 minutes long, and there's one very clear difference between all of these shows and that one.
Was that just you and John?
No, I wasn't on it.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the difference.
Okay, that's
It
that's yeah. Okay,
it
that
was Jack
that
and
makes
Jakub.
sense.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh yeah,
apparently,
that's right. That's right.
apparently,
Jack and
I
Jack
force
and
guys
Jacob.
like you and Nick to talk with me for so long. But of course, you
Oh,
also
okay.
contribute to the fact that these episodes
Yeah,
are this long. I think yesterday with Nick, we went for like over almost 2 hours. But anyway, as
yeah,
we said, that's going to be it for today. Hopefully, you enjoyed it as usual. We definitely enjoyed spending time with you. And thanks for all these comments in the chat. And just I'm glad to talk to you guys again. And of course, to you, Vansh.
yep. It was a lot of fun, and I love also looking at the chat and the comments and addressing those as well as previewing the matches for the next day. So yeah, this show has been pretty successful so far.
We got the okay from Vansh. The show is successful. So yeah, I guess we can finish here. I think John is in the chat, so he will probably finish the
Yep.
show for us.
If he's not already
He
asleep.
will. Looks like. But yeah, there's gonna be a few
If you
seconds.
enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.